Her keynote is called Ethical Marketing is Not an Oxymoron. Integrity and performance not at odds. That's her bet. Let's find out how she's worked across luxury retail, film, Fox, Warner Brothers, and now leads her own award-winning global PR. Hey, welcome back to Process Over Pressure. I'm Chad Parrish, founder of Stonefly Consulting Group, and this show exists for one reason: to give a voice to the people building something real. Not the highlight reel, the full human journey. My guest today is someone who has spent years helping founders build brands that actually stand for something. She's worked across luxury retail, film, Fox, Warner Brothers, and now leads her own award-winning global PR agency, Catalyst Brand Strategy, supporting more than 116 brands across health, technology, and regulated industries. Her keynote is called Ethical Marketing is Not an Oxymoron. And I have a feeling that the title alone tells you everything you need to know about who she is. Integrity and performance not at odds. That's her bet. Let's find out how she made it. Katherine, welcome to Process Over Pressure.
Thank you so much for having me, Chad. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Me too. This is going to be a lot of fun. Here's somebody, you worked at Fox Warner Brothers, high profile, wow, you've done luxury retail. You've been very, very successful. What was the moment like when you stopped and said, you know what? I'm not building anyone else's brand. I'm going out and I'm building mine. What was that like for you?
I actually distinctly remember the day I was working at a luxury watch store, and we would get people who would come in having celebrated just buying an island. That was the caliber of clients we would receive. And I remember thinking to myself, just one of these watches is my entire annual salary and then some. It's above and beyond. And so it really got me thinking, if I were to do this, if I were to just sell on my own without having the kind of headcount or existing brand, if I'm already doing sales at like 80K, 100K, high ticket sales as they call it, and I was profiting a much higher portion of that percentage, what would that actually look like? And it just got me thinking. It got the wheels kind of turning in terms of the possibilities and what this meant, because we recognize as kind of sales associates or staff that every single client that walks through that door or potential client could be someone that converts. And so you have a matter of seconds to make that first impression, connect with them in a meaningful way, and then essentially understand what they may need and want, and then obviously go through that kind of conversion process. And so I realized a lot of the skills I had learned on the ground floor in those retail opportunities were skills that I could transfer into something of my own making and promote something that I actually truly believed in and valued, that was beyond sort of like a material goods that I was selling. So it really encouraged me to explore the service world and what that would mean in terms of supporting impact-driven founders and to apply some of those sales skills in a more meaningful way.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. And I agree with you. I mean, so many people, I think I can relate to exactly how you feel. I mean, I was at one point making, I looked at myself and I was like, I'm making a lot of these companies a lot of money. And, I'm and I don't think money is everything. Like, I don't believe we do everything we do for money. And I don't want people to think that this is about money, but there's a sense of freedom, right? When you own it and it's yours and you get to put your mark on it. Like, there's a lot of people who sit at a desk every day and go, well, if I owned it, I would do it this way and this way, this way. You sit around the water cooler and had those people say that, right?
Yes.
But there's only a few like yourself, like me, and like a lot of our listeners that say, okay, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to go out and do it.
Right.
And you did that. And shows that not only were you successful, with these other companies and successful for them, that I'm sure they were like, well, no, Katherine, please don't go. We want you to keep making money for us. But you did it and you created something successful. So kudos to you for doing that, right? I mean, that's not easy.
I appreciate that. Absolutely. And I think a big part of that decision making came from the fact that I recognized somewhere along the line that selling something that I didn't truly believe in was eating away at something I couldn't quite describe or put my finger on. Like you said, it wasn't about the transactions. It wasn't about, these kind of day-to-day behaviors. It was really more about the fact that I felt like I wasn't truly living to my full potential or connecting with people in a way that I wanted to, and making that greater impact. And so I had to kind of weigh up the kind of cost exchange of, if I stay here in this comfortable position, and yeah, it is comfy. It's, you get in the habit of making these commissions and you have your regular clients and, you get into the swing of it. Or do I take the leap and really kind of go all in something that I believe in, and knowing that there's a risk, but knowing that the payoff and the reward for that in terms of the intrinsic value would be indescribably better.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think for a successful entrepreneur, people who are really out to do it and really grow and want to be successful, there's a deeper purpose within them. There's a purpose behind what we do and how we do that. And I think when that's not being met in our normal 9 to 5 job, or we're not fulfilling that purpose that we feel like are meant to be, I think that's more of a pull on us than the money thing. I think the not being able to fulfill that purpose inside us, that's driving us, is that little part. It's always saying, you can do this and do it better and be very successful. But we just sometimes fearful to take that leap. So, that purpose, maybe you talk a little bit about that, because I think what you said is so true. Like, that is what really motivates and drives us.
Absolutely. I was listening to something the other day that sort of described it as this sort of like internal fire, or this burning. It's like, yes, you can go to your job, you can do the everyday thing, but in the back of your mind, in your heart, there's this almost like craving for something more, and it never goes away. It doesn't matter how many hours you clock, or even if you get a promotion, or if you feel like you're leveling up, that inner kind of burning continues to stay there until you listen to that inner voice, and take a chance and do the bigger thing that you're called to do. And I think, maybe not everyone has this to the same degree. And that's a big reason why entrepreneurs are as crazy as perhaps we are. Because yeah, it's like we feel like we don't have a choice almost. It's like none of us want to kind of wake up at our deathbed and go, why didn't I take that chance? Or like, why didn't I just aim for what could be possible, and try my best? So yeah, I do think if anyone relates to this feeling of this like inner burning, and it can be from a creative sense too, like an artist or an actor or things like that. There are so many different expressions of this, but I just think
Hmm.
that quieting that inner voice, and trying to kind of suppress it honestly just doesn't go away. And the sooner you sort of listen to it and take a chance, the more your life will sort of reward you for it.
Yeah, there's almost like this. I describe it as this moment where you feel this peace within and this happiness that you may have never experienced before.
Hmm.
I find myself today making less money than I've ever made in my entire life, but the happiest I've ever been.
Yes.
And my agency's new too. I just started, really new, and so I don't have a big client base yet, but I'm happy and I enjoy what I'm doing. And I actually, the people that I am working with, I see a big change and a big purpose being fulfilled in them. And so when you get a chance to help people and you help the company, and some of these are companies that, maybe have struggled for a really long time, or maybe are just haven't, had someone to sit down and listen to them and say, what things can I do to make my business? Because they're afraid, right? A lot of people they're afraid, and then when they do that, and you get an opportunity to be entrusted by them, there's no better feeling than to know that they trust you to come in to give them your point of view, or to help them. And when you get to do that, like and see the success, that is really fulfilling.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it shows in the work and the people you connect with as well. You're no longer having to do it because you have to clock in, or you're committed in some way. It's very much a choice. And I think that changes the relationship in terms of clients, in terms of, the products that you put out, because it
Yeah.
is all very intentional, and it's coming from this place of, I want to help. And, the impacts that come from that, the ripple effects are truly profound.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so true. That's a great way to think about that. You get to choose. You don't get it chosen for you. You get to choose who you want to work with, and they get to choose you.
Yes.
It's a two-way street, right? I mean, they're engaged. People can engage with us for our services, and we're only as good as how we deliver, right? I mean, we're in a service industry. We deliver services, goods, whatever that may be for them, and so we're judged on how well our services help them. So it's it could be fun. It could be scary and fun, I should say.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you touched on something so important earlier around happiness and how more and more people are kind of almost like waking up to the fact that our lives are short. And if you're not truly fulfilled, if you're not enjoying your day to day, then something has to change because otherwise, what's the point? And even though happiness isn't quantifiable in the same way that a monetary exchange is, I think obviously the value in terms of inner fulfillment is absolutely priceless, and it's so worth taking that leap for the potential of what it could potentially bring.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just it's something that's I think if more people stopped and thought about that and thought about, what is it that's really fulfilling me and started really thinking about that, man, I think they would feel much better about just everything. Like they would have some, anxiety would probably go down for a lot of
Yes.
people and we would probably find ourselves really enjoy like life. And I think that's the thing that yeah, it's kind of a side note, but I see people as often as that are like, especially when I talk to business owners, people that, man, it's just, they seem so stressed and they seem so like, almost like you get the sense that they hate what they do.
Mm.
And I'm like, man, my thought goes to my mind is like, how could you have this and something that you've worked all your life to build to a great company and hate it? It's wearing on you so much that you hate it and I think there's a lot of business owners that are that way, that instead of stopping and saying, "You know what? I'm gonna call Catherine and bring her in to help me work through this and pull and rely on people to bounce things off of." I find myself being more of a soundboard for people than anything. Like they just
Yeah.
talk through things and then we kind of work through some of the problems that they got up here, but they just can't get it out. I don't
Mhm.
know if you experienced that, but once you do,
Absolutely.
our our creative mind, the way we're built, can start taking those and pinning them on the wall and creating into this pattern that's man could do some magic inside a company.
It's so true, and I think bouncing ideas off between different people who understand your vision ultimately means you're able to brainstorm and come up with ideas you maybe never would have if you were trying to just, plug it into an AI bot or figure it out on your own, and I think it really speaks that level of collaboration that makes work so meaningful and also brings joy, because obviously as humans, we do crave that sense of connection and collaboration. And maybe for, the business owners who are at a point where they're not enjoying it as much as they used to, it's obviously there's so many variables that may contribute to that, but I do think that collaborations and the partnerships that they've made are a key point to that as well. So going back to what you were saying earlier around choosing our who we work with, it really goes hand in hand with the overall meaning and making sure that it is adding to the both the value that we see externally and also what we feel internally.
Yeah, area. You worked at Warner Bros. And what a huge monster, right? I mean,
Yeah,
big monster, right? As far as come to branding and publicity and marketing and all the things, like they they got a monster of a team that they do that
right.
with, right? So being in that and seeing that the good, the bad, the ugly, having opportunity to work on probably some awesome films, awesome releases that they were doing to kind of now having your boutique or your niche, what you do. What would you say maybe one or two of the lessons that you learned from that you said, I'm walking away from this experience to now kind of mine and maybe you took along with you or learned along the way.
So many. Well, one of the ones that always stays with me is the fact that you can put a big name on a brand, a package, a product, or, a film, whatever it may be. But if that celebrity or brand ambassador doesn't actually truly align with the core messaging, the audience is going to feel it. There's going to be a disconnect. The performance won't do as well as is initially anticipated. And that really comes back to the authenticity piece and making sure that whoever you do vet for that role truly does care about the story, they care about the mission, and they are able to embody it, not just within the confines of their contract, but also outside of that and continue to be a representation of the values that you hold. And so to apply it more on a boutique level, the brands that we work with, many of them do want to secure long-term brand ambassadors. And they're not always, the biggest influencers or the biggest celebrities, although sometimes they can be. Often they are more like thought leaders in the space who have their own niche community or a smaller following, but they're very, very dedicated and loyal. And instead, it's about facilitating those partnerships in a way that truly does create a win win relationship. and encourage that long-term, I guess, value exchange between the two different brands. And so that's one of the biggest lessons I learned. And I think it can be applied to any level of business. It's what we kind of call word of
Yeah.
mouth marketing at scale. And it's where someone else vouches for your brand for you. And because they have that built-in trust, your brand and messaging is more likely to go further and get into the right hands. So that's a big tip that I would definitely recommend.
I love that. That is, I will tell you that that's something you don't hear every day. Like I think that's a great lesson because you're right. You don't have an alignment with the people that you have helping you or marketing for you or there's not I think this kind of goes to, the integrity part, like this whole thought about that. And I love, your keynote, and I want to talk about this. I think there's something to unpack is, ethical marketing is not an oxymoron. Like, tell us what you mean by that. Tell us a little more about that because I think it aligns exactly with what you're saying.
Yes. So, there's this kind of funny saying in film that there's almost like an artistic hierarchy where like film is the cream of the crop. That's like when you think about fine art, when you think about high quality, like especially more like the art house films, like that is the cream. And then at the very, very bottom is like advertising, like, the stuff you see when you're trying to scroll past on Instagram. And so there's marketing has this kind of perception of being almost like the dark psychology of the different forms of emotional storytelling because you're using emotional storytelling to basically nudge someone through that journey, whether it be the customer journey or patient journey or likewise. And so in order to be really conscious of the journey that you're guiding your customers through, it's very important to also be mindful of the other side where they could be misled or misguided if they weren't given the right information. And so, because we work in such heavy compliant industries across health and wellness, we are very mindful of the importance of ensuring that any message that goes out truly does have evidence backed messaging and it is really grounded in tangible things that do support someone's well being. And it's not necessarily false or misguiding because at the end of the day, there's so much overwhelm, especially in this space, and people don't necessarily know how to look after their well being, where to begin. And so we want to make sure that all messaging is very much true to the integrity of both the brand and also honest with the consumers who might be trying this product for the first time or seeking patient care for the first time. So that's really how we kind of approach it from a broad brushstroke perspective. But I do think that there are so many layers to ethical marketing, and a big piece of it does come down to knowing your values and the lines that you refuse to cross, no matter how much money it will make or no matter who is telling you that that's the right direction to go in.
Yeah, and I kind of I want to I kind of circle this because this is something that I'm experiencing. Maybe I think you're probably the right person to kind of talk about that a little bit. I think it's a big problem.
That's fair. So, to give some more kind of commonplace examples in PR or the media world industry, and what can sometimes happen is these bigger brands can just jump onto an event or to a theme and then brand their thing for that theme. So, right now it's LGBTQ plus awareness month. And so you'll see that a lot of banks start having like rainbows on their, ATMs and doing all these kind of campaigns, but it lasts for the 4 weeks and then it disappears. And do they truly advocate or create different touch points or support mechanisms for those who might be feeling, isolated from or not having the support that they require? Probably not. And so there's this almost tendency to market for the sake of tapping into that consumer, but then not actually supporting them beyond that one time marketing event. Another case would be greenwashing, so more in sustainable spaces. A lot of, I don't know if you're aware of this, but in the supermarket, there's a lot of brands owned by the kind of supermarket brand, but then they just rebrand it and then give it kind of this artisanal look. And so they'll be like, farmers X, but then actually if you look at it, the farmers are getting paid absolutely nothing. The branding is just mass marketed using very like cheap products and not even good quality, and then they've packaged it in a way that it seems kind of farmer friendly, and it's not sustainable either. So yes, there's many examples of this, and I think it
Yeah.
really comes down to the owners of that brand and how they want that integrity to be translated across, and making sure that their decisions every step of the way are very much in line with their core values and they're not slowly steering off, because it only takes like a couple of we can compromise a bit here, we can compromise a bit there, and then before you know it, you're so far off from the original values that you wanted to start off. And maybe that's what you were describing earlier with the business owners or founders who are not enjoying their work anymore because perhaps it has steered too far away from what they first envisioned.
And I don't mean that mean. I mean, I just think that, we're right. We want to pull on heartstrings because we know the consumer may not be fully aware. And we play to that in a way of, just like the model you talked about with the farmers and saying it's farmer friendly, but yet the farmers are getting nothing out of that. They're the ones that's doing all the hard work.
Yeah.
And and they're I mean, they're being kind of compromised or used a little bit in a way because it's not truthful. And I think, what I love about, the way your approach is being very integrity with what you're doing and mindful of those things and making sure that, the commitments around the whole unit, not just a singular part of it.
Right, absolutely. And I think it can be tempting, in our current economic state and the kind of world that we live in to take some shortcuts here and there or to, compromise a little bit. But we just have to be careful to always check back to that core point and think, okay, well, if we compromise here, what are the kind of secondary consequences that can come from that? How far would we steer off if we continue to compromise in this direction? And so I do think it's about having that honest and transparent conversation, but also surrounding yourself with people who aren't just yes people. They're not just going to say, hey, great idea. And they sort of allow you that moment to check in and weigh up, what does this truly mean in terms of that bigger brand perception, not just short term gains?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think our society today is, and not to get into to where we are, nothing political or anything like that, but our society or our culture today is very much, instant gratification. I mean, you look, we got more people who are clicking through social media today than ever before,
Hmm.
hours upon hours, and they're growing by the day. It's not slowing down, and we have more people advertising on a out or a platform than we ever could imagine 10 years ago.
Hmm.
So we very much appeal to a quick decision. We want to capture people. The mindset is that in branding or anything, as we're walking down the street and we see something, it speaks to us at that moment that we make quick action. Like
Hmm.
not there's no more thinking about it. It's
Right.
more of I want it now. Click, you
Reaction.
can have it now. It's
Hmm.
reaction. We very much shifted to a reaction model, and I think that's kind of leading into the world of AI and what it's doing and the instant gratification. And there's a
Hmm.
lot of marketing that is being taken over by AI, and the authenticity of the human element is being cut out. And so I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that because I see it as again, I'm very cautious. I love AI. I think AI is a great tool, but I
Hmm.
also think the human element is very powerful. And I don't want us to get to a place where we forget that human element for the integrity of what we're trying to do versus just instant quick and make it
Right.
easier, faster.
Absolutely. Well, we've definitely seen uptick of AI across our industry as well, like everyone. And I think, some examples of this are even the biggest, most trusted journals or publication that you read, whether it be Forbes or likewise, they're all using AI. The amount of times I've gone onto one of these publications and seen a very clearly AI written article and been shocked because you'd think that, these journalists would be discouraged from not that it's AI slop, but it's pretty close sometimes. And so it's been a bit of a shift in terms of the industry and the types of content we're consuming. And going back to the business owner or the founder piece, I think it's really important to remember that your voice is truly the most valuable asset. And so you need to think about your story and the unique IP or the unique frameworks that you've developed over decades of your career and turn that into a concept that is uniquely yours. And sure, you can distribute that using AI, you can save time, you can cut it and do all the cool things. But the actual key story needs to be true to your voice and it needs to be true to your framework that someone can't just Google and copy and paste. And that is the human element that is so valuable and will continue to be valuable as we continue to head into this direction of AI.
What what do you say, or what's your thoughts on, like, and you kind of alluded to this a little bit, like the amount of I would say marketing material and the SEO optimization, like it is so like AI heavy right now, where
Mhm.
people are using it, and I have my own belief on it, and happy to share that. But I'd love to know, just from, just you do more PR than what I do, and mine more business consulting side. What's your thoughts on that? Because I'm seeing like a just an influx of people using these AI tools to do SEO for. I, I just have my own beliefs on it, but I'd love to hear yours. I'll be happy to share mine after.
Yes, absolutely. I'm curious to hear yours for sure. Well, from our perspective, we look at it more in terms of right now, listicles are what's getting ranked in the top of AI searches. So
Yeah.
they'll say, like, this brand was featured in the top five products on X or something like this. And what we've noticed from the data is that it's showing us brands that get PR early in the kind of large learning models AI world. They're going to compound much faster and better over time. So the brands that are getting in now on listicles, high quality press, getting those featured and getting it trained in these bots, they're the ones that are going to continue to kind of see the benefits long after. Whereas those who are jumping on the bandwagon later or getting the press later, it's almost like there's less data points to work with, and they're sort of behind. And so it's funny because PR is actually seeing a bit of a spike because of this, because everyone's recognizing now is the time. Who knows what the space is going to be like in a few years' time? And we might as well get in while it's early and get our brand featured at the top while we can.
Yeah, it's a race, right? I mean, it's a race to who gets there
Mm.
first, and how
Yep.
fast. And I will say, I think some of what we're seeing, this is just my view on it, is that you know you got the top, like you just mentioned, and totally agree with you on that. And then you have everybody else. So what's happening too is that you get a lot of these businesses that are trying to do SEO optimization through AI. Well, they're all writing the same content. So if you're in an industry or a vertical, and you're using this AI platform, it's the same language. So it's pulling the same 25 others that are in your vertical. That's kind of maybe not word the same, but it's pulling the same elements.
Hmm.
And so I tell people, the ones that are doing it a little different, and maybe this is a little nugget out there that's for somebody to hear, is you got to have a little bit of that. It's fine to use it, but pull it back and put a little human element in it, and a
Mm.
little different vertical in that, because you want to change you want to, the way this thing works is it's looking for similarity. And so
Right.
when it sees something different, and it kind of starts looking at that, and sometimes
Hmm.
can offset you a little bit different than what's out there.
That's a great tip. That makes so much sense. I remember back in the day, I say back in the day, it wasn't even that long ago, but in the internet world, it's forever, when SEO agencies would like value stack blogs. So they would look at like the top ranking blogs in that category, in that keyword, long tail, whatever. And then they would basically add another chunk to it. So you'd get these like 2,000, 3,000 word things where they've just stacked as much as they possibly can from getting all these different pieces together. So I think some of these techniques to a degree have been around for a while, but we're just seeing that in tenfold now with the use of AI, and people who are maybe not necessarily SEO agents, but they're using these AI tools to kind of try and hack their own SEO presence. So, or AEO as is now known. So yeah, very, very interesting times.
Well, and I mean, I think as we look at PR and PR or consulting, or anything, that all these are different tools and pieces that help companies grow and be successful. And so when they're evaluating that, my hope is that some business owners start looking at things, at people like yourself and like me, that are different, that don't do it the same way everybody else does. Because I will say the large majority do it the same way. They
Hmm.
use the same tools. And so when you want to be different, you're trying to set that, you got to kind of think about, if you're so I mean, like this, if you're out here searching for, hey, I want to find me a PR person, da, 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 it's going to give you a list of 20, and I would almost guarantee that 20 of them are going to be doing it pretty close to the same.
Hmm.
Where you can find, what I liked about you and what you're kind of an advocate for is that you have experience, but you also do things a little different.
Mhm.
Your method's a little different. You're thinking a little bit outside the box, and I think that's where companies are going to win when they engage with people like that. My opinion.
Absolutely, that makes so much sense, and it goes back to what you're saying before around the human piece not being something people can replicate. It needs to be out of the box thinking, out of the AI framework thinking, and instead it's about how can we really unearth that unique element that you bring and then infuse that into the various different aspects of business, whether that be SEO, operations, marketing, or otherwise.
Yeah, because I mean, look, AI is a powerful tool. It's not going anywhere, and I think the use of AI is important. Like I'm an advocate for it. I think it's great. I use it. I use it with companies all the time. But I just think you have to have that human element plus AI. You have to have somebody that can explain it to you put it in the process that's going to give you that thought process behind the human element along with that. And if you really do a great job of pairing the two, very powerful, very powerful.
Absolutely. And we've seen this as well in terms of trends. AI isn't necessarily a tastemaker. It doesn't know what people are kind of thinking, what's being discussed in like the human world to a degree, at least not yet. And so, it's about kind of understanding, well, what would the kind of human connotations or interpretation be of this piece if someone were to truly read it, resonate with it, and how can we layer that into our understanding and processes and output. And I do think that that piece is extremely valuable and it's not going to be replicated anytime soon.
Yeah, you're right. So man, this has been fantastic. As we're kind of moving to the end, I always have to ask this question. It's kind of it to the end of our time together, but I want to know, and I think the audience should know, you walked away from an agency, a world in January to run your own. What's the one thing or maybe two things that you wish somebody would have told you, but no one told you as you were doing that, or you wish you had maybe known before?
Absolutely. I was thinking about this the other day, actually, and I think one of the most useful things that I would have loved to know earlier on is that less is more. So when we first
Mm,
started out, actually, we were a full stack agency, a full stack marketing agency. We did absolutely everything, and that's because me as a founder, I was naturally curious. I was good at copywriting. I love strategy, and so I was like, oh, I'll combine the creative mind with the strategic mind, and then we'll just do a kind of like a full holistic map of what that marketing department could look like. And we were mostly working with early stage business owners back then in various categories. So it was very much about doing more, doing as much as we could. And of course, as people quickly learn in business, operationally, that is quite a mess. But also, it's not necessarily the most efficient way of producing the results. So one of the things I learned early on was to pare back our offerings and just focus on what is truly going to be supportive for this founder at this point in their journey or this brand with the direction that they're heading in, and cut out all the extra fluff. They don't need the extra features, the benefits, the blah. They just want to get the end result that they originally approached you for. And so by honing in and getting very, very clear on what it is that they truly want and not assuming, sometimes that means literally asking them or doing the market research and then refining your offer from there. I think it would have saved us a lot of just scrambling, to be honest, and figuring it out and in my case, doing above and beyond what one person should be doing. And yes, we had a team, but yeah, when you're working at that scale or scope, there was just a lot to be dealing with. So I'm really glad we made the decision probably a year ago now to focus only on public relations and communications and kind of branding within that. And so, we do still have the digital marketing background and knowledge to understand how it feeds into their other teams and ecosystems. But now we very much have our specialist sector, our industry that we focus on, and a clear offering, and that has obviously led to much better results. And in short, the reason why we got to this place was because I recognized that the one thing that supported everyone was word of mouth marketing at scale, and the easiest way to do that was through public relations. So here.
I think by myself doing the same thing. I think all entrepreneurs do. I struggle with that, like getting into that singular niche that I'm really good at, but you also try to be too much thing. I think people get scared of turning things down that they may not be really good at because right. So, but I think that's great advice, and I think that man, for anybody, any scale, even large companies, be good at what you're at, what you're good at.
Thank you.
Well, Well, Catherine, this has been absolutely fantastic. I've really enjoyed our time together. And so if someone's out there and they're listening and they heard this, how do they get in touch with your agency and you, your team, maybe to engage with and say, hey, I really like what Catherine's saying. I'd like to talk to her a little more about, what she's doing or how I can engage. How would they do that?
Absolutely. You're welcome to visit us at www.catalystbrandstrategy.com. And I would suggest doing a complimentary call. It's only 15 minutes or so, but it'll give us a good indication of where you're currently struggling, what gaps we could potentially fill. And we usually provide you with some key updates on what's currently happening within your industry or vertical that could relate to media, PR, and communications. So that's always a great starting point.
Thank you. And I highly recommend if you're out there and you're like, we wanted to do some PR, but we don't know what we don't know. Catherine's great. Her team, they can answer questions and just lead. What I like about what she does is she wants to hear where you're at and suggest. She's not going to just tell you something, or she's not going to just take on something. She may suggest you to somebody else, but
Yeah.
she's really looking at how how she can be a service to you. And that's what we are. We're a service industry. And if we can't service you, we're not going to we don't want to just take your money to say we can do it. We want to make sure we're the right fit and we get you in the right place where you need to go. So don't be afraid to reach out. It doesn't cost you anything to have a phone call and just find out, what needs to be done. You may be surprised and hear something that you're like, wow, that's going to change everything for me. So
Absolutely. And we love sharing free resources and kind of different directions that someone could take if they're not quite at a place where they're ready to invest yet. So, especially as I was saying, we love impact driven founders and those who have this kind of bigger mission. And some of them aren't yet at a place where they can truly invest in PR at the scale that they want to. And so we always sort of say, start here. And let's revisit this 6 months, a year from
that's
now.
great.
There's so many different opportunities, but we want to continue to have those conversations and build those relationships.
I love that. That's great. Well, thank you so much. And as always, I'm Chad Paris with Stonefly Consulting. This is Process Over Pressure. I have people every week like this. Really enjoy our conversation. And again, I'd love to help you as well. If you can't find Catherine, you can always reach out to me at stoneflyconsulting.com, my website. Happy to connect with you on LinkedIn and Facebook and all those fun things, and can connect you back to Catherine if you need that. So again, as always, thank you for joining the show. It's Process Over Pressure every time.
Thank you, Chad.